All right, so I know everyone here heard this joke last night, but I'm going to do it again for anyone live streaming. So I'm James Maxey. I am most known for my dragon novels. I write big, fat collections. This is War and Peace, famously a large novel. You'll notice that my novel is an inch taller. I am not going to claim that makes me a better writer than Tolstoy, but you're going to trust reputation or your eyes. I will also say that this book opens with a pagan orgy in the woods. This book opens with a dinner party where everybody is a prince or a princess, and they all have unpronounceable Russian names, which proves to be a continuing theme throughout the book. If you've never read any Russian novels, they have the Russians never settle for one name. Every character is called by 6 different names based on the context and who's speaking to them. And so you're just constantly struggling to figure out, who is this? Here, I stick with one name. Now, admittedly, some of them are dragon names like Vendevorex and Albekazan, lots of K's and Z's. But at least I pick one name and stick with it. Now, after introducing that, I'm not going to read from that. I'm instead going to talk about my superhero stuff. The only full novel that I had come out in 2017 was Covenant. This is the 3rd book in my Nobody Gets the Girl series. It's also the concluding book. Nobody Gets the Girl came out in 2003. So 14 years later, the 3rd book came out, making it the world's slowest trilogy. There's a middle book in there called Burn, Baby Burn, a supervillain novel. So the first book was Nobody Gets the Girl, a superhero novel. Then I wrote Burn, Baby Burn, a supervillain novel. And this I had to write because I wanted to write a super team novel. And Covenant, in Burn, Baby Burn, 2 supervillains go on a rampage. And so the government has to recruit a new team of superheroes to go stop them. And this team of superheroes is called the Covenant because they are making a covenant to be able to use their powers openly, but only lawfully working with the government. And so it's a new deal for superheroes. The woman on the cover here is named Skyrider. And she's had superpowers all of her life. She was once a superhero back in the first book, Nobody Gets the Girl. And then she went into hiding after the events of the first girl made superheroes completely illegal. And she's been in hiding for 8 years. And during this time, she's gotten married. And her husband has zero idea that she used to be a superhero. She has an assumed identity. She started a new life, and she's never told him the truth about her past. And now she's going out once again fighting supervillains and showing up covered in bruises and with weird excuses for where she's been. She is a pilot of charter planes, so she has good excuses to be called off on short notice and be gone for a while. She'll tell them, I had a client, I had to go, and but the whole reason I wanted to write this book was realizing that I had put her in this situation where, suppose that you're Superman and you do marry Lois Lane and you don't tell her. And it's 5 or 6 years later. It seems like it's going to be an awkward conversation. And so this is one of those times when Sarah's been out fighting crime, and she's come home, and she was expecting the house to be empty, but instead her husband, the deputy sheriff, had swapped shifts with someone. She gets home and she sees his car in the parking lot or in the driveway, and so she has to come up with this whole thing where she has to make a call and tell him, I walked to the grocery store, and you need to come pick me up, and then she's realizing, oh, wait, I don't have a wallet. I can't buy anything for the grocery store. And so, she runs out she's in front of the grocery store. He picks her up. They're driving home. And they get to the driveway. And they've just been having this awkward conversation about why she walked to the store on such a cold night. And why she didn't, call him or anything. And so they're just sitting in the driveway, and she says, "We're just going to sit here?" She finally asked. "No," he said. He swallowed hard. "I'm not coming inside." "What? Why?" He didn't look at her. He stared straight ahead at the house. Finally, he whispered, "Because I know what's going on." And that's the end of chapter 19. Chapter 20 is called Truth. Sarah's heart raced. What did he know? Did he know everything? If he knew, would that be wonderful or terrible? The silence between them extended a long time. She opened her mouth to speak. He cut her off. "There's really nothing you need to say." He didn't sound angry. He sounded weary. Look. I know He closed his mouth and took a deep breath to his nose. Softly, he said, "I could have done things differently. This isn't all your fault." "What is it you think is your fault?" she asked. Now his jaw clenched. "But it's not my fucking fault," he growled. "I mean, what? Just because we can't have kids, it's over? You're seeing another man?" "What?" She was both relieved and mortified, and the word came out half as a laugh. "Another man? What are you—" "Please don't," he said. "I can barely, just barely, take being cheated on. But I can't take being treated like an idiot. Christ, Sarah. Sometimes the excuses you make, it's like you think I'll believe anything you say." You shouldn't," she said. She leaned her head against the door window. It was cold as ice. I'm not always honest with you." "So who is it?" he said. "It's nobody," she said. "There is no other man." "Of course you say this immediately after telling me you're not always honest with me." "I'm honest about everything that matters," she said. "I swear to you I've never been unfaithful." "Then what could you possibly be hiding from me?" he said. "I mean, those bruises you get sometimes. You said you were taking a judo class. You're not in any classes here. You're checking up on me?" "Sarah, Bob Mills is the only guy in town who teaches judo. I ran into him and asked him how you were doing. It turns out he never had you in a class." "Ah," she said, which in retrospect was something she should have checked up on before using that particular lie. "Yeah, I wasn't really taking a class." "Then why the bruises? Why the lies about where you are?" "I don't know which bothers me more," she said. "That you think I'm having an affair, or that you think I'm having an affair with someone who beats me." "Don't turn this around on me," he said. "I'm not the one who's lying about how he spends half his life." "It's nowhere near half," she said. "Fine, 40%, 10. What does the number matter? You're doing something behind my back, something you'd rather lie about than be straight about. What could possibly— Is it drugs?" "Don't be stupid. Look, if it is drugs, there are programs—" "How the hell could it be drugs?" she asked. "I mean, you're a deputy. You probably know every drug dealer in the county. You don't think it would get back to you if I were buying drugs?" "Drugs weren't my first instinct," he said, sounding defensive. "No, your first instinct was that I was a slut," she grumbled. "What the fuck is your damage?" he exploded, banging his fist on the dashboard. "How the hell can you be angry at me?" "Please don't shout at me," she said. "Please tell me the goddamn truth," he screamed. She swallowed hard, a lump in her throat. She was on the verge of tears. "God damn," he sighed. "This is how this ends? You crying, me driving away angry, never knowing what secret you had that was so goddamn terrible you couldn't talk about it with me?" "No," she said. "No, I don't want you to drive away. I want to tell you. I've wanted to tell you a long time. Since I met you. I came close right before we were married, but Carson, I love you. I love you more than anything else in the world. I can't lose you. I can't." "You won't," he said. "You won't if you just tell me the truth. I can handle anything. I swear, an affair. Drugs. If you've murdered someone. She burst out in sobbing laughter. Great. So now it's murder. Is it? Is it murder? Not too many, she said. He looked pale. That was a joke, she said. You used to get my jokes. I used to get a lot of things about you, he said. Thought I did, at least. He squeezed the steering wheel again. It's got to be something pretty terrible. I mean, what wouldn't you tell me? You tell me everything. Oh, Carson, she said, her voice catching in her throat. I can't tell you. I can't tell you. Why? I have to show you, she whispered. Show me what? My secret, she said. If I don't show it, you'll never believe me. Okay, he said. Show me. Follow me, she said, opening the door. Where are we going? He asked when she didn't head straight for the front door. The backyard, she said. It's dark there. Great, he sighed, closing the trunk door. You're a vampire. Maybe she could convince him of... She shook her head. No more lies. Time for truth. She said, come on, and headed for the darkest corner of the yard in the shadow of the trees. This is where you've got the bodies buried? He asked, following her. She could tell he was trying to make a joke. Tell also, a little bit, that he wasn't. I haven't killed... She stopped. I started to say I haven't killed anyone, but honestly, I have. Oh my God, he said, stopping a few feet from her. Then he grinned. Okay, sorry. I know you're not some kind of crazy serial killer, so please stop joking. I'm not joking, she said. And I'm not crazy, and I'm really not a murderer. I've only killed ever to defend myself or others. 12 people, maybe. 24 tops. His grin slowly faded. You're serious? She crossed her arms. I used to have a job, like yours, protecting people. Sometimes things turn violent. We fought a lot of people who thought nothing at all about killing other people. We had to meet force with force to protect the innocent. So, wait a minute, he said. Were you like in the military? Some sort of secret forces? Is that what you couldn't tell me? No, she said. I mean, not in the military. The team I was part of, we didn't really have a name. We weren't working for any government. But recently, the team got back together. Now we do work for the government. We're called the Covenant. The Covenant. I don't like the name. Servant suggested it, and my mother liked it, and I didn't care enough to fight it because I thought it was going to quit in less than a week. Servant, said Carson in a flat voice. The super guy with the white suit. That servant. That's the guy. And you work with him. Carson, she said, look at my feet. He looked down. He stared for nearly a minute. His eyes slowly rose the length of her body, stopping for several seconds just below her face. Finally, he summoned the courage to look in her eyes. Your feet aren't touching the ground. She nodded. You can fly. Yes. How long have you been able to fly? Yeah. Since before I could walk. Truth is, I really didn't get the hang of regular walking until I was like 5. He didn't say anything, just kept staring into her face. It was time for the really hard part. I used to be called the Thrill. I fought crime with my sister, Railblade. The alien who destroyed Jerusalem? She wasn't an alien, she said. I'm not an alien. I'm completely human, totally ordinary, except, the flying stuff. And you control minds, he said softly. The Thrill could control people's minds. Okay, no, she couldn't. I couldn't. There was this voice thing I did, and look, it doesn't matter anymore. I had surgery. It altered my vocal cords. I don't have that power anymore. When we met, did you have that power? She asked. No. I came here maybe a month after I had the surgery. You were the first guy I talked to for any length at all after I gave up my old powers. It was intoxicating. Intoxicating. Because you liked me. I could tell you liked me. And it wasn't because of any mumbo-jumbo weird powers I had. You liked me for being me. He, he couldn't look her into her. He couldn't look into her face. But you weren't being you. No, she whispered. And yes, I mean, I used to be someone different, but I stopped being that person. I gave up the sky and came down to earth. And you kept me grounded. I've never had a single regret about meeting you, except for being a coward and not telling you everything. If you told me everything, he said, I'd have had you arrested. I mean, the thrill is wanted by the FBI. I mean, how can you be... I wasn't guilty of any of the things they say I've done, she said, except for some of the things. She crossed her arms. Things I did for the greater good. According to what the FBI says, you used your mind control powers to defraud wealthy men. They say you could ask for anything and people would give it to you. Those weren't my best years. Everyone I stole money from was a crook in some way, she said, which doesn't make what I did right. That wasn't how I want to live. So I gave up that power and came to live here. Why here? Because I met you, duh. He looked dubious. I had some money from that time in life when I was borrowing from crooks. But I didn't want to live on ill-gotten gains forever. My father, my real father, Niko Novikov, owned a fleet of private planes. Even though I could fly on my own, I also learned to fly his planes when I was young. So as long as I was faking an identity, I also arranged for a pilot's license so I could have some honest revenue. And then, on my very first job, I ran into you. You know it was love at first sight. Love, he said in an almost bitter tone. She didn't know how to answer that. Wasn't even sure it was a question. And now, you're a superhero. I don't really use that word, but whatever, yeah. I hate them, he said. Every cop I've ever met hates them. Every time the Covenant is in the headlines, we hate them a little more. We're trying to be helpful. You fly above us. You turn into ghosts or a bulletproof. I mean, how the hell am I supposed to deal with this? What the fuck? Keep your voice down, she said. At least let's go into the house so your neighbors can't hear us. You go in the house, he said, turning away. I'm going to the cabin. Please don't go, she said. You don't have any right to ask me to stay, he said. You're a stranger to me, a stranger. I'm going out to the lake for a few days. When I come back, please be gone. She didn't follow him, but didn't call out. What could she say? What was there to say? She watched as his headlights pulled down the driveway. With her feet still 6 inches off the ground, she willed herself to float toward the back door. During her confession, she'd been chilled to the bone by the awful truth of her secrets. Now, she was just plain cold. Inside the house, she put up her jacket. She went back to the bedroom. She heard something in the closet. She opened the door and found her helmet beeping. She'd forgotten to put it in silent mode. She pulled the helmet down and put it on. Using retinal command, she launched her voicemail. Sarah, it's Richard, said the recording. The hair rose on the back of her neck. Richard Rogers, her first lover, the man who ditched her for her sister. She hadn't heard from him in 7 years. This couldn't possibly be good news. There's really no way for you to call me back, and this isn't something I want to leave on voicemail. I'm going to call again in 1 hour and pray you'll answer the phone. Look, just make sure you answer your phone. 1 hour. Until then, be careful. Thank you. Time to sell last week. All right, so I do have one more thing to read. After finishing this trilogy, this world, I love writing superhero novels, but when I created this world, the inciting incident that created superpowers gave the superpowers to about 5 people. And it was sort of a function of this world that it was a very limited set of people who had these superpowers. And so most of the people who joined the Covenant as new superheroes all have technology-based superpowers. They're basically all mini Iron Men in different forms. And so I could come up with all these little technological enhancements, but as far as building a world where there were like hundreds or thousands of superheroes, it wasn't really in the cards. So I'm now writing a series called Lawless, and in it there's a team called the Lawful Legion, And the Lawful Legion is sort of the equivalent of the Justice League. There's about 20 or 30 members. They are all gods walking the earth. There's Golden Victory and She-Devil and Smash Glass and a Tomahawk. And, every one of these is an A-list hero. The sort of person who jumps up and goes to fight the alien invaders, and you clap when they fly overhead. And Lawless is not about them. Lawless is instead about the superheroes who either have powers that are too weird or useless to get them on the A-team, or it's about people who get superpowers and just don't really have any kind of compelling origin story to go out and fight crime. So some people get super strength and go out and fight giant robots. Other people get super strength and say, I can make a killing as a moving furniture. And so the Lawless series is sort of following these not quite ready for the A-list heroes. The first book in it is called Cut Up Girl, Lawless Book 1. This will be out actually next Friday. It's available for pre-order right now on Amazon. It is...
good cover.
I'm very proud of this cover. So I'm making all the covers for the Lawless series myself, and using stock art and Photoshop and a lot of the text design that I've made. The next book will be out about February 15th. It is called Big Ape. Big Ape is Harry Moreau, who is the best friend of Victoria Summers, the cut-up girl from Book 1. Big Ape is... I really like. Cut Up Girl is a great book, but Big Ape is like if 14-year-old me had sat down and told an adult the plot of the superhero novel he wanted to read. It's the plot of Big Ape. So
awesome.
So yeah, it's it launches from a murder mystery and somehow winds up with Harry leading an army of animal men to fight robotic dinosaurs in a hidden jungle city, and then things get weird. So this is chapter 1 of Cut Up Girl, Slice. As I climbed the ladder to the deck of the submarine, a huge hand clamped onto my shoulder. Any hope that it was Harry vanished as I looked up into the snarling visage of an injured steam ape. The tangled wires inside his glass skull dome glowed red hot, giving off smoke that smelled like battery acid. The sound of gears stripping and grinding filled the air as he tightened his grip. The steam ape looked like he was seconds from death, but he still had enough strength to jerk me off the ladder, drawing me toward his slathering jaws. Suddenly, Harry towered over both of us, his enormous fists raised over his head. Glass and gears flew as Harry smashed the beast's mechanical brain. My attacker's grasp went limp. Harry grabbed my forearm before I fell back into the hold. "You all right, Valentine?" he asked. "Yeah," I said as he set me on my feet. "You get Chopper?" "He's cruising higher than I can jump," he said, craning his thick neck to look at the sky. I followed his gaze and saw Chopper's helicycle in silhouette against the glowing clouds. I heard his engine screaming as it strained to lift the Victorian's time bomb. He was barely a quarter mile away for all the good that did us. "What genius put together an assault squad without a single goddamn member who can fly?" Screaming Jenny screamed as she came up the ladder. "Take it up with the retaliators," snapped Harry. "Don't panic, I got this," said Nimble as she leapt from the dock onto the sub beside us, knocking 2 of the remaining steam apes into the river with her extended arms. All the holes the killbot had punched in her earlier had closed up. I guess having a body the consistency of silly putty makes band-aids unnecessary. She wrapped her legs around the ladder for support, then stretched skyward, turning thin as an extension cord as she reached for Chopper's ride. There was a flash of bright blue light as her elongated fingers wrapped around his torso. Nimble recoiled with a twang, snapping back to her human form with such force she bounced right off the hull of the sub. "Nimble!" Harry shouted, diving into the river. He was only under for a second before he surfaced with Nimble pressed against his chest. She spat water, then sputtered. "Cut Up Girl! You didn't warn me he had a taser." "You just survived a killbot," I said. "How can a taser hurt you?" "Without total command of my muscle fibers, I'm useless. Electricity screws me big time. We're all screwed, Jenny said, her voice a sob. She sat down, running her black fingernails through her purple hair. Oh, Jesus, he's going to trigger the bomb. I'm going to start wearing corsets again. It's going to be okay, said Harry as he climbed back onto the sub. He placed his hand on her shoulder. No, she said, twisting away from his touch. No, I've been on the other end of the Victorian's time ray. It's terrible. I can't go through that again. If we don't stop that bomb, we're stopping it, I said. I locked eyes with Harry. Throw me. What? He asked. Throw me. It's our only chance to catch Chopper. You're confusing me with Golden Victory, he said. There's no way I could get you that far. You can with my help, said Nimble. I'm too jangled to stretch after him again, but I make a pretty good slingshot. Big Ape, I'll need you to pull me back and aim Cut-Up Girl. You're both out of your minds, said Harry. There's no time to argue, screaming Jenny shouted, punching Harry in the center of his leathery black chest. Do it! Nimble was already stretching her trembling limbs toward two sturdy pilings at the entrance of the dock. With her rubbery skin still wet from the river, it sounded like some invisible clown was building the world's biggest balloon animal. She wrapped her arms and legs around the two supports and called back, Let's do this, Valentine. I jumped down onto the dock and ran toward her. You're going to get yourself killed, grumbled Harry. Shut up and do it, Jenny screamed. I pressed myself into Nimble's crotch, holding my breath. Thanks to her dip in the river, she smelled like sewage. Harry leapt down from the sub. The whole dock shuddered as he landed behind us on all fours. Are you trying to kill yourself, he asked. I know that finding out the truth about your father was really messed up, Val, but this isn't suicide, I assured him. Then why? I can't let the bastard win, I said. Why is this up for debate? Nimble asked, her voice squeaky and distorted by her stretched out lungs. We can't let that bomb go off. I swallowed hard. If I don't get through this, take care of Bullet, okay? Harry clenched his jaw and didn't answer. We need to do this now, said Nimble, with increased strain in her voice. Harry grabbed Nimble and started pulling us back. I glanced over my shoulder. Our faces were only inches apart. Maybe it was just the water running from his fur, but it looked like he was crying. Please don't die, he said. I hate your dog. I nodded. He let go. The sudden acceleration shunted the blood from my brain. When I regained my senses, I was hanging in midair at the apex of my arc. Weightless at the moment, my rise stopped and my descent began. Harry had aimed high. I was falling toward the rotors of the helicycle. Time slowed to a crawl. The Vectran-sheathed titanium rotors knifed through the air at 8 rotations a second. But adrenaline had speeded my perception until I saw each blade. I briefly wondered if I'd slip between them without harm, until I realized I was falling too slowly for that to work. The blades would slice me to ribbons. Was this suicide, after all? No. Whether I survived or not, I wasn't choosing to die. I was choosing to fight. For the first time in my life, I was completely in control of my destiny. I had no regrets and only one final, lingering doubt. You know how they say that when you're facing death, your whole life flashes before you? I had a life flashing through my mind. But after what I learned earlier, was it really my life? I rose that morning thinking I was Valentine Summers. Now, as I fell, I was no one but Cut-Up Girl. Beneath me, the blades were close enough to touch. I stretched out my fingers and touched them. Thank you. Again, available for pre-order. And the Cut-Up Girl is probably the most mature book I've written, as far as I would not recommend it for younger readers at all. It does have some a great deal of sexual content, even though there's actually no explicit sex scenes within it. There's a scandal involving Cut-Up Girl and a sex tape that turns her into a household name because of, I guess, what today would be called revenge porn.
Right.
And so suddenly everybody has seen this scandalous tape about her, and she's, the butt of jokes on, for late night comedians. and she really wants to start her life fresh, but it's hard to get a job when the only entry on your resume is a former member of a violent outlaw vigilante gang. And she is told she had to turn state's evidence against her former partners in this vigilante gang, and so she's avoided jail time, and she's written this tell-all book that she's worked with a ghostwriter to put out, and she's really like enthusiastic, wanting to change the world, to tell her real story. But the publishers, all they care about is all the stuff that happened to create these sex tapes. And so, the author is telling her, there's going to have to be some sexual content, and you've got to expect the marketing is going to be that. That's what's going to sell. But we're going to tell your whole story. People are going to come out of this knowing what you're really like. But then, the book that hits the newsstand, is just, the scandal rag. And so she's trying to deal with this parody that everyone believes she is, and, who she thinks she really is. And so a lot of it's this struggle for identity. There's a lot of examinations of, the double-edged sword of celebrity, because she keeps coming into money because she's signing book deals and has other streams of income, she at first scoffs, but she eventually, Playboy finally offers her a figure that she's like, all right, I guess, I need this money. And yet she keeps spending money right and left. She's also constantly being sued by people that she formerly injured when she was a vigilante. So anytime she makes money, it instantly goes away. She also develops a bit of a drinking problem. So it's really a very weird superhero story, and then I have this superhero action, and then I have this decline. But then as we enter the book at the end of the book, where she's once again fighting steam apes and having to save the world from the Victorians' time bomb. And time bomb is not a bomb that waits for a certain moment to go off. It's a bomb that will change the time back to what it should have been, according to the Victorian. So the Victorian says he's a scientist from the Victorian era who's arrived here in our time sub, and he's shocked to find that his beloved city has a black woman as a mayor, and that, and he looks around and it's just like, you've become this whorish Babylon. We gave you the foundations for utopia, and look at, the terrible mess that you've made of the city. And he builds this time correction ray, and so if he zaps a car with the time correction ray, it turns into a stagecoach. And, he will zap thugs with it, and they'll turn into people in suits. From Victoria. Yeah, from Victoria. Yeah. And so they're, and the science behind all this, I actually spent a lot of time going through this, because I have someone who's like, if you hit a car with a backwards time ray, it wouldn't turn into a stagecoach. It would turn back into ore and rubber and all the raw components. And so there is an explanation for how this time ray actually works. So having Victorian as kind of the main heavy, so you have this one modern sexual plot going on, but then you have the Victorian, with this very Victorian ethics, and so there's a lot of contrast between the two extremes. And it's as you might guess from the reading, there's also just a ton of humor in it. It's kind of fun, occasionally humiliating the characters.
Is it fun? Is it fun plotting out her messy life?
It was, yeah. So I wrote the first draft of Cut Up Girl in 4 days. I did it in 4 15,000 word days to produce a 60,000 word first draft. And it was, a lot of it was unusable. But part of it was that I had it kind of plotted out, and I reached a point about 30,000 words in
where the character did something, and she made a choice that I wasn't expecting her to make. And as I'm writing it, I'm like, yeah, no, this is what she would do. This feels right. This isn't me. She's not a puppet now following the plot that I have. That's a more traditional superhero plot. Now she's like, I'm done with this traditional superhero plot and redemption plot. I'm going to go off and make some mistakes. But they're going to be my mistakes, and it's a path I'm going to have to follow. And so, there's some very weird stuff that happens in this book. But I think it's very human stuff. I think that, if you go into it wanting an alien invasion, wanting to fight the alien invaders and the steam apes on every page, you may be a little bit let down, because there's a pretty long sequence towards the end where it's just about her trying to start her new life, and there's actually an alien invasion during it. And during the alien invasion, she stays at home and watches television and drinks red wine, while there's actually fighting going on the street right outside of her apartment. But she's done with that. There's the Lawful Legion. That's their problem. They're going to deal with the alien invaders. She's got to figure out how she's going to pay her rent next month. Drinking red wine, watching television probably isn't going to get that rent paid. But it's the best plan she's got.
That's pretty awesome.
I very, very happy about that. And then once it moves into one of her most redeeming qualities through the whole book, as you see her make some poor choices and do some things that you're not going to approve of, her friendship with Harry. So Harry is, his name is Harry Moreau. His mother is Anastasia Moreau, who's the granddaughter of the very famous Dr. Moreau from H.G. Wells. And like her grandfather, Anastasia Moreau is really into making man-animal hybrids. But her grandfather did it surgically, and she's doing it genetically. And Harry is her natural son, but he's half chimp and half human. And the government found out about him and was like, oh, no, this can't be allowed, and arrested her, threw the mother in jail. And Harry's been raised first by foster homes and later in this government institution called the Butterfly House, where children with superpowers are isolated and taken. And so Harry and Valentine meet in the Butterfly House. And Valentine, the Butterfly House is top secret. In Valentine's tell-all book, she thought she was going to be telling the world about the Butterfly House, but instead, the government pressures the publisher to take all that out. And
wow.
And so, it just comes out where it's just the scandal story, and none of the stuff she thought was going to be there. And when she talks about it, everyone just assumes she's a nut. And Harry, her best friend, is now, part of her plea bargain deal is she got Harry to be a real superhero. He's now part of the Lawful Legion. And he can't go against the Lawful Legion and say, oh, everything she's saying is true. So there's this tension between them, and yet there's also this loyalty between them, and it's basically these two young people. There's a lot of scenes in the book where he'll be out fighting crime, she'll be doing whatever she's doing, and they get together at this all-night Chinese restaurant, and they'll just sit and talk until 4 a.m.
Like you do.
And a lot of the chapters end with them opening up their fortune cookies and finding some little cookie saying that takes them on. And then in Big Ape, Harry reaches a point where he's like, the truth will set you free. If you tell the truth, it's fine. On the other hand, silence is golden, and so keep your mouth shut is probably the wiser course. And it says, this is what you get when all your wisdom comes from fortune cookies.
Right. It's often contradictory.
So, really excited, hoping that the books do well, and I can wind up writing another 50 books in the series.
Awesome. All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.